Okay, I think it's 1 minute past 12. We gave a little bit time for everybody to join in there. Can everybody hear me?
Sure
I hope
can.
so. Okay, very good. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear members and friends of the German American Business Council, or in short, GABC, I am Michael Haueisen, Vice President of the GABC, and on behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you to the first of series on online panels. We hope to follow this with an in-person conference in late spring of next year, depending on the circumstances. Following the positive echo on last year's very first German-American Economic Forum on healthcare, we felt encouraged to follow up with another forum, this time on the hot topic of smart cities. Actually, cities aren't smart. They are made smart by people who design, build, operate, and live in cities with the help of new and smart technology. Technology offers tools to tackle a myriad of today's urban challenges, from creating livable urban communities to tackling mobility needs. And creating technology solution is something German companies have always been very good at. Smart cities is really a broad field. And the current pandemic has made that field even broader, revealing needs for smart solutions to manage administrative errands, to COVID contact tracing, and keeping offices safe. Now, what role should and can private business play in supporting the development of smart cities? Let's explore this question during today's panel on pandemic resilient cities and the role of technology. We have two excellent industry speakers, Jaime Boisvert, General Manager of Siemens Infrastructure, and Lars Leitner, Senior Vice President of Turner Construction, a subsidiary of German construction company Hochtief. Jaime has been with Siemens for about 11 years and is today responsible for the Eastern Massachusetts and Rhode Island markets. Among others, her focus is on electronic security, telecommunications, and building materials. Lars oversees the design, build, operation, and corporate development and innovation of Turner Construction. He has worked both in Germany and the US and can speak to cities and construction from both perspectives. Last but not least, the panel will be moderated by the wonderfully knowledgeable Rick Dimino, President and CEO of A Better City. Prior to that, Rick was the Commissioner of Transportation of the City of Boston. His career spans 35 years in infrastructure and urban development. I would also like to take the opportunity to thank my fellow organization task force members, Emily Westhofen, Annette Wiedenbach, and Oliver Bante, as well as our president, Bodo Liesenfeld, for all the work they have put in to make this panel series happen. And finally, my utmost gratitude goes to Siemens Smart Infrastructure for sponsoring our event series. Siemens, as a German enterprise with a global impact, is without a doubt spearheading technology advancement in supplying products and services for smart cities. Let us watch a short video introduction to the Siemens Smart Infrastructure.
We want to be healthy and safe, find opportunities. But our infrastructure and natural resources can't keep up with growing demands. We need to be smarter. We need to care more. It's time to create smart infrastructure. We can because we connect energy systems, buildings, and industries to adapt and evolve the way we live and work. New opportunities come at the grid edge. Energy consumers become producers. Batteries power electric motors, and buildings and devices become grids. We create new kinds of environments, sustainable, responsible, for the good of our planet and the people. You care, we care. Together, we're creating environments that care.
So that was an interesting start. And before I hand over now to our moderator, just a quick organizational hint. You can submit your questions anytime by using the Zoom chat functionality and send your questions to everyone. We will then try to address these questions in the Q&A session towards the end of today's panel. And with that, I hand over to our moderator, Rick Dimino. Rick, take it away.
Rick, you're mute.
Thank you. We're already doing a good job with managing our presentations today, and I'm very, very honored to be asked to help moderate this conversation and to be joined by two wonderful panelists. Michael, I want to thank you and Emily and Annette, and of course Bodo Liedensfeld, for your great leadership in the German American Business Council of Boston. I've had a chance to be affiliated with the organization over a number of years, and I'm very impressed with the good forward thinking that your organization is consistently involved with, and the kinds of wonderful perspective and also thought leadership that your organization provides. So Michael, thank you so much. And again, thank you so much to Siemens for hosting this event with you all today. I think the panel presentation and the conversation of our two panelists, as well as the good questions and thoughts that all of you will have, will really make this a rather both thoughtful and engaging event today. I myself, as Michael mentioned, have been involved with what I like to refer to as city building for a number of years. And we at A Better City are a very focused organization on the notion of city building on behalf of the economic drivers of Massachusetts. My board constitutes those types of businesses that are really engaged in Massachusetts being a globally competitive state and play our role in trying to shape infrastructure that really positions us to be one of the economic drivers both here nationally as well as globally. Infrastructure is at the heart of our economic future. It's also at the heart of our quality of life. And it's, as the reference to our recent Siemens video, at the heart of caring, meaning at the heart of our humanism and our ability to take care of one another and our ability to create economic as well as equitable platforms for all people to be able to be involved with a sustainable future. Now, as it pertains to smart cities, please, I'm sure all of us know that smart cities has been a concept and an idea that has been around for a number of years. And certainly here before the challenge of this pandemic. It's absolutely critical now that we pivot this notion of smart cities and look at it in the context of how it might play a role in making cities better at being able to create healthy environments and environments where we can all engage in the care and the well-being of all of our citizens and all of our colleagues, and also the activities of business. And technology and the notion of smart cities can certainly play a role in helping us make our cities safer. I, for one, for example, I've been very interested in the role of transit and transit's relationship to technology and how we can use technology to make our transit system safer, obviously taking a big and important role in the relationship to buildings and bringing back our people into the workplace in a safer way. And then our communities. What I've learned is that we will need to step back and really embrace this notion of wellness in our design and infrastructure and the architecture of cities in a very substantial way. For those of you that are involved with these practices, which many of you are, wellness was an important concept that was beginning to get attention relative to how we might regulate wellness and how we might drive wellness in the market, and also how we might drive wellness in the design integration of infrastructure design and construction, as well as buildings. Now it's front and center. And it's also critical relative to our future in terms of smart cities. In addition, smart cities has and will continue to play a role in the questions of climate change and resiliency. And cities are critical drivers in that regard. And then finally, in terms of my perspective on this, as I mentioned to you before, it's reasonable across the globe that we need to think about smart cities in relationship to connecting and caring for all people, in the relationships to equity, and the opportunities around social, economic, and environmental justice in smart cities now need to play a very important role as well. And then all of us in the private sector have an important role to try to achieve these ambitious goals and aspirations. And that's why we're so pleased and blessed to have these two panelists with us. They have spent a lot of time thinking about the relationship to smart cities, technology, and most recently have pivoted to help us think about smart cities in the context of addressing those serious challenges of this pandemic, but have been long after and interested in the role of smart cities in a wide range of initiatives that help to make our cities better. So I'm going to first introduce Jaime to share her perspective, and then Lars. And I really look forward to your comments, Jaime and Lars. And Jaime, if you don't mind starting, that would be wonderful.
It would be my pleasure. Thanks so much, Rick. I'm excited to be part of this conversation today, and particularly to be representing Siemens in the conversation. As a member of our smart infrastructure business, I think making our cities more resilient into the future is something that we can take out of this trying experience that we've had over the course of the last 6 months or so. It's interesting, Siemens' story in the US is reflective of the enduring relationship between the United States and Germany, which is the relationship that prompted us to get together and have this conversation today. For Siemens, our US business actually goes back about 160 years. So we're thinking this is around the time Abraham Lincoln was first elected to Congress. And while we've grown from those first early orders here in the US, now the United States represents Siemens' largest market in the world. And that's thanks in large part to economic cooperation and free markets and trade. And the underpinning of that growth is really the commitment to US industry and infrastructure. So right now, really over the course of Siemens history, our focus has been on meeting the needs of society. And our infrastructure solutions can be found in over 100 US cities. And that service to society was really never more important than during the COVID-19 pandemic. That meant supporting our community's critical infrastructure, making sure that essential services like electricity, water, and transportation stayed up and running during that period. Here in Boston, my division's smart infrastructure worked with our partners in the construction field to quickly bring a shuttered medical facility back online, specifically to serve the homeless population. And that's a community that was at particularly high risk for COVID-19 transmission, something we were proud to be a part of. But Siemens elsewhere, likewise, the Healthineers down in Walpole, they turned their production facility over to ramp up for antibody testing. So regardless of what the need is, we were looking for ways to be serving society. What's interesting is here in smart infrastructure, we've identified new use cases for the technology that was already there. So not necessarily new technologies, but rather finding innovative ways to take advantage of what we were there to better serve the needs that have arisen. So for example, businesses and communities are using IoT sensors and software to make indoor environments more safe and healthy, and really to support the building users as they come back to feel comfortable and to have information to support their decisions as they re-enter some of the indoor spaces. So you could have an app on your phone that would tell you how the space in your office is being used before you even arrive there. You can get a feel for density and what areas in the office people are congregating in. That helps you as an individual coming into this space make the decisions that you're comfortable with, really empowering you as it relates to risk. These types of sensors and technology can gather data to help with enhanced cleaning. It can help with space planning to look at optimizing employee safety and health. And then also things that are more practical in the short term, like assisting in contact tracing. There's countless options of the ways that the technology can serve. And again, I'm not talking necessarily about something new, but things that were already in place that we re-engineer or rethink about to better serve our current needs. It's what I've described as a disruption in how we were using the technology, and the pandemic has been a disruptor in many ways, in the ways that we live and we work. But one of the positive things, I think, one of the few positive things that's coming out of it is that we're realizing digitalization and how much faster that's happening for us to come to the future that we really wanted to get to anyway. If you look across, that's happening outside of my personal industry, but something as a consumer that I see that happening in is with medicine and telemedicine. Technology existed, but our adoption of it, taking down the bureaucracy and regulation that were around it to make something that was really improving society and people's health and safety. That's an example of how that's happening. And digitalization is a huge opportunity for us in our cities in many different ways. It's interesting, I'm telling you this from my Siemens perspective, but we're not the only ones who think so. About a month and a half ago, we conducted a survey with the United States Conference of Mayors and the Harris Poll, and we got feedback from them that was very similar. What we wanted to know is, what will it take for our cities to move forward, given the health, economic, and societal crises that we're facing? And it was pretty overwhelming that investments in infrastructure and with a focus on technology are an important part of that addressing these crises. So 89% of mayors who were surveyed agreed that they would need to implement smart technologies to help employees return to work. And 97% agreed that an investment in technology to adapt how commercial buildings are being used was going to be necessary in the future for the success of their city. So the nice thing is, investments like these have that societal impact in terms of health and safety, but they also generate jobs and economic growth, which is going to also be crucial to our recovery. We see this moment in the potential for digitalization to drive an even bigger transformation towards greater resiliency and sustainability. The technologies that prevent COVID-19 in our buildings, for example, can also be applied to lower carbon emissions. This is something that we've been working on for a long time, and it's super important because buildings represent 40% of global emission. So continuing with a focus on health and safety, but also driving efficiency is key. And that I know that transportation is near and dear to your heart, Rick, and that same transformation is available through electrification from a transportation standpoint. As we ready our transit systems to welcome riders back, instead of going back to the way things were, we can reinvent our commutes to be shorter, more enjoyable, and improve air quality in the process. So I'm looking forward today to exploring more with you, how we could use the power of the technology that's already available and that's being developed, and to work together and see that our cities emerge even stronger, really, than when we entered into this crisis. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Jaime. That was very well said. And this notion of building back better is something that I think we all need to embrace. So I'm so glad that you decided to close on that notion. Thank you. Lars, we look forward to your comments as well.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Thanks for inviting me and giving me the chance to say some words. Like Jamie's saying it, who could ever imagine, that so much change in our personal life that fast, and then the global economy, when you think about how we sit here now on a screen, normally it would be in person on a panel. So everything basically changed, our practice, our routines, and basically overnight. And who could ever imagine somebody, or basically our company asked us to work from at home. We're asking our people for work from at home. And also, unfortunately, think about how many businesses were forced to shut down and probably will not come back. So what we experience here is never seen before, in my opinion. And you saw the supply chains were disrupted. You saw this very extreme impact on our hospitals who have not the basics available. And the entire interaction, when you look at our customers, how we interact with our customers and clients, everything basically changed. When I look at our construction industry, sure, we look first at our jobs, and most jurisdictions deem construction as essential. And so most of our construction jobs remained open. And I can only say it was great to see these extreme fast, but really great collaboration between all the members from the real estate, the cities, the construction industry, to really quickly mobilize to apply state, local, CDC guidelines that our workers really could work safe. But on the other hand, sure, when we talk about technology, we were pretty happy that we have in our company integrated things like BIM, Building Information Modeling, as something we're working with. We're working with that now for 15 years, because that basically enabled us to continue working in the situation we're currently in. Sure, like Siemens, we started to very fast develop some, I call it, in my opinion, low-tech solutions, screen our people, enhancing the cleaning in our offices, in our jobs, and also office management apps, basically following social distance guidelines or finding my colleague at the office where he currently is. Or even, I was even impressed, when we look at our social or local building authorities, we really were able to coordinate inspections online, virtual, with remote conferencing, screen sharing tools, something which I would, if we would ask them a year ago, they would never be able or never be willing to do things like that. But for me, really in our company, the most amazing thing was then when I looked at our old-fashioned superintendents who had to stay home, and all of a sudden they appreciate technology. But now they could work at home with technology. And I think really that's for me really the key. The people adopted in a speed never seen before. And sure, we always used, or most of us use technology to measure our heart rate, when we go running or even walk the stairs, and we control our heat in our houses. Honestly, I think it did not really get into our day-to-day how we do work, and that's the change. And I have these words in my head here from the CEO from Microsoft. He said, I think in April he said that even, or April or May, he said, they've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation, and that in 2 months. He probably would have an extreme statement today, I would say. And it's really not about the tool. It's really, it's a mindset. It's the attitude to change. It's the approach. And I think that will probably accelerate the change. And sure, we talk about the cities. We witness some other developments. Now we see people are leaving the cities. I don't know how extreme it is in Boston, but in New York, they're going to the suburbs, and you're in a city, and sometimes at midday, you really think it's strangely quiet here. And we also see this not very refreshing discussion about, do we still need office space? But in my opinion, that should not distract us for the overall trend we are facing. And the reality is the population is growing. When we look at our urban areas, we have today in the US, I think 83% of people working in the cities, in urban areas, and the forecast it goes up to 87% in 2050. And honestly, cities have overcome crisis, and they will do so again. That's our opinion. And the cities have these, what you don't have outside really. I think in that professional way, you have. It's promoting social interaction, enables mobility. We have easy access to healthcare. Most of the employment opportunities are still in the cities, and the cultural attraction are in the cities. And on top of that, I think when we talk about facing our long-term environmental issues, the best opportunities to address that is really through our cities. And so, from our point of view, let's say we see the COVID as a wake-up call, and we have to now accelerate in our thinking to make our cities more resilient. We have to address climate change and take it serious. Take it serious, the changing weather conditions, the flooding, the earthquakes, the pandemics, and And I think this new way to think will hopefully help us here. And we really cannot go backwards. You know, we cannot now, now I don't know how you are doing it, but we use plastic again, you know, and drink our water. I think that's not the right way. We're using the cars to commute again. We have to go back to or away from that very, very fast. You know, when I look at our industry, construction, real estate industry, yeah, I think we can do a lot. You know, commercial residential buildings, I think we have 12% of total greenhouse gas worldwide are we contributing. And when we're planning neighborhoods, communities, you know, we also have to talk about transportation. I think they're adding on another 28%. So huge potential. And in our opinion, technology will be now, or will be the key role. But on the other hand, I would say we also have to kind of use kind of common sense. Look at our basic human needs, you know, look at the park we love close to us. Look at the open spaces we really love in cities like Paris. Look at the ability to open a window. We need clean water, reliable energy supply. And our buildings are, in our opinion, really the engine of these cities. But we're not developing the cities from scratch. They're there. You know, we all love these, I don't want to say buzzword, but we all have net zero buildings. But, you know, net zero buildings does not mean it's not sufficient, you know, to buy a certificate that you basically planted some trees. I think really we have to find together here, everybody together, solutions where technology helps us. And I think the last 7 months, honestly, it changed the point of view and hopefully help us to adapt that change way faster than we were doing it the last decade.
Thank you, Lars. You know, the aspect that cities will always be critical to our society and the role of future growth, I think is fundamental. And I couldn't agree with you more. Cities have transitions and cycles like every other aspect of our global society. And cities have, in their own right, outside of environmental issues, kind of this kind of resiliency that goes beyond anything we can imagine. And as you know, and Jaime knows, population growth, as you were mentioning, Lars, is going to trend towards seeing cities continue to be the center of population and economic and intellectual capital, as well as social both capital growth, but also social challenge. So cities need to find a way to lean in. We might see a short term intervention relative to the people's choices in relation to cities as a result of this pandemic, but my sense is that they'll be back, and they'll be back actually in more of a robust way than we have experienced pre-pandemic. So I appreciate your perspective, and Jaime, yours as well. I'm just gonna have a couple of questions for us to have a conversation about, and then we'll turn it to our guests today. And you know, one of the things that we were talking about is this intersection now relative to smart cities and technology, and as Lars said, common sense of wellness and the opportunities to deal with climate and resiliency. So if you think about it, there's this layer of the quality of our spaces being aligned with being safe. And at the same time, I'll use the reference to something that I've heard in our real estate market world, the notion of spaces in commercial areas being purposeful, meaning be there for a reason as opposed to being the default case. I assume coming out of this that it's not going to be the case that all people who have a job will need to go to a space. I think people who have jobs will come back to the office space because there's a purpose. And how do we align that with this smart city strategy and this wellness strategy, resiliency and climate change? And the other point I want to make is some people are starting to imagine our workplaces being destinations, meaning places that we'll want to go to. And so now you have these other interesting layers of purposeful space and destination space combined with this notion of wellness and resilient and climate enhancement space. So what kinds of technology and private sector interventions might be in the mix, or what should we be thinking about in terms of building out cities in the future? And I know that's a big question, but Jaime, I'll start with you and then go to Lars.
Sure. So yes, that is a big question.
I know.
I think, fundamentally, I think it has to do with flexibility. So during the pandemic, we've seen it varies from company to company, but a lot of corporations, both in the US and abroad, are looking at their workforce and recognizing that the team could be for the most part, very effective remotely. So I think the early statistics that we have suggest that it's likely that the workforce will adopt at least a hybrid approach. There may be some corporations who bring people back, or certain functions that come back in person entirely, some that stay entirely remote, but for the most part, there'll be a hybrid approach. So when you look at how what's needed commercially now from a space requirement, I do think making that space a destination is going to be key. My thought is that it's really going to be around the flexibility for function. So at its most extreme, if you look at spaces like the convention centers, they're established and designed for a very specific purpose, and they have some flexibility. I think we pushed that flexibility all the way to the edge when we made the convention centers into field hospitals. But that's an example of if we plan for flexibility, and perhaps even to that we could stretch further, and you take that concept and apply it into spaces where in the past we've been very specific about how it was designed. I think that's going to be the foundational way that we start to look differently. I think you've already, that in combination with the expectation that will enhance quality of life. As we look at the urban areas, that we're going to be looking more regionally. So even whether that's depending on how short-term or long-term it is, the expectation is that we're going to partner our urban areas with the surrounding suburbs, and then start to address some of those things of, of making a destination and having that destination be a flexible space, whether that's where I'm going to go to work and stay and have dinner or see a show that night, or I'm going to a place of worship that's near the park, or whatever the different space uses are, that they'll have some flexibility and take into our neighborhoods maybe will be bigger as we look more regionally. So try to touch on that big question, a few different areas where I think there's opportunity, but technology is only in all of that is only a facilitator. It's not the driving function. It's just going to make that flexibility a little bit easier, or make you want to come to that destination because you feel safe and you know that there's been thought into the sustainability of that space.
I couldn't agree with you more. I see technology as a critical thread and a connector, and also a kind of a enhancer of that experience. I still think personal choices and preference and connecting human to human will still have a role to play, and that technology will help hopefully modify and amplify those opportunities, as opposed to be the core of the relationship to how we interact and produce output in economic activity. So I thought you answered the question quite well, Jaime. Thank you. Lars, any thoughts on this subject?
Yeah, perhaps one thought, we ask our people, do they want to come back to the office? And I was totally blown away when I saw how the different people answered, because the last thing I expected was the answer I got from the young people. Our young people said, I want to get back to the office. Take care of it. How do I get back to the office? So that's the last thing I expect. I thought, the young guys, they're all technology freaks. They love it. They're at home. They have the computer. They can do everything from at home. And they said, no, your job is to get me back to the office. And, interesting why they're saying it. it's this what you just said, Rick. It's this social interaction. You know, they want to be with their other young colleagues, and they also want to be with their supervisors because they see, yeah, I can do a lot administrative stuff from at home, also some creative thing, but there's a way bigger learning effect when you're in person with somebody. I thought it was very interesting because it was totally not what I expected. Going back to your question, you know, it's similar, you know, like Jaime, like you're saying, how I see it, you know, flexibility is, and how can technology help, you know, let's talk about flexibility. I'm thinking about a simple thing. How do I get back my people in the office? And honestly, it is really not that my office is not prepared for it. My office, we changed it dramatically fast. And sure, we will make it next time even way better. But it's more like, how do I get to my office? So it's a commute, you know, and it is like, and simply we have here a train called MTA. And what is MTA saying? They say, oh, not so many people going to the office anymore. So we have less trains. So we have packed trains again, you know, and people are scared. So when you think about technology now, you know, that means for me, yeah, if I would know sitting here at home that the train is empty, or, you know, in an acceptable way, you know, I can get on that train, or if I have the flexibility to start in the morning at 6 o'clock, or if I like at 10 o'clock, so stretch the way I work. I think, and coordinating this, so it sounds all that simple, you know, coordinating that in the company, you know, when are people available? When do I know that when are they available? And they want to have the flex. They don't want to tell you on Friday last week when they're at one time, they're coming next week on Friday. They want to decide that at that morning, you know, because as I just said, train is perhaps too packed. So simple things, they look simple. They're probably not that simple, but things like that, I think, could help a lot. On the other hand, when we talk about space flexibility, you know, we're #1 healthcare builder in the US, and we're pretty close to the hospitals. We also built, I think, 3,500 beds now in basically 2 months, you know, and because what was missing? The flexible space, you know. Jaime, you said in Javits they had this hospital that built that up, and but you know, that's not really what it should be. You know, going forward, hospitals will rethink. They will think, how do we create this multifunctional space where I can go from normal space and then open up ICUs very fast and have the equipment available. I'm even thinking about the poor guys in retail. You know, what intelligent solution will be there in the future so they can have, on the one hand, on the storefront, their retail where you can go, but on the other hand, also switch that basically to online retail where they can basically sell this in a different way when as they currently can do it. You know, you see some of the companies, I don't know if that's the best example, but I just read that from the pizza guys here. I think they're called Dimino, or they had the technology to switch in seconds. They improved the app. They had immediately cars on the street. They directly connected to the client, and I think they had an improvement in their business. Think about it. In the pandemic, some of the other guys, competitors, big ones, got bankrupt. So I think there you see even examples where people have basic tools that could enhance that very fast. And I think that's probably what we're seeing in the future.
I think your point earlier about the Microsoft leader seeing a transition in the digital relationship to our relationship to the utilization of that new technology, what would have taken 2 years being 2 months, and people having it be more common relative to their relationship, is absolutely kind of a paradigm shift that I think is phenomenal, right? And it does relate to making it kind of more day-to-day as opposed to something that's foreign or mysterious. And that may likely be a regular part of how we integrate technology into our lives. And then make it maybe, as the two of you help lead the industry to kind of balance these technology initiatives with the built environment, maybe more adaptable and more acceptable for people to accept it as part of our lives. So that's a good point, Lars. I really appreciate that point. So thank you so much. I am going to open it up now to see if we have any questions from the audience. And our colleagues, Annette and Emily, might share with me some questions that we might have gotten from the audience. But as I wait for those questions to appear on my screen through the chat box, let me just check. Yes, good. So I love it. Lars, Jaime, this technology stuff is already working. I have some great questions from the colleagues that are joining us today. So let me see. Lars, this might be really appropriate for you, and kind of, it's funny because this question is related to a conversation that both you and Jaime and I had. When will we be able to enjoy buildings whose windows will open again? I live by a car whose windows were nailed shut. If I could get fresh air ventilation through open windows, perhaps we could return to our buildings. Also, what kind of HVAC system with ozone or UVC virus killer filters would be needed to make an office space safe again? So therefore, kind of going old school and going new tech, all in one question. Thank you, colleague, for whoever shared that question. I'll turn it over to you, Jaime and Lars.
Sure. Would you like to go first, Lars?
Yeah, sure. It's a wonderful question because I talk about that all the time. No, it's really a key thing. You know, we think it's normal that we're sitting in the office and cannot open the window. And I built a high-rise 30 years ago where in a high-rise you could open the window in the upper floor. And it had a double shelf facade, and it was basically the idea was to address the point. People get more sick in these buildings where we pump the air in. And think about it, it's not only the air. We have here only systems where everything we do with air means we're cooling with air, we're heating with air. You know, think about how way more intelligent systems out there. Cooling through a cooling ceiling. That means you cool with water. You know, heat radiators where you heat with water. Total different kind of heat and coldness, which has a total different effect on the body, and you could open the window. And I honestly, Rick, I think that's the future. It is possible. We can build your high rise, and you in the upper floor, you open the window, you go on the double shell curtain wall, you still have another thing in front of you. And I'm convinced that has to be the trend. And sure, it costs more money. There's no question about it. It's all about money. It's all about, is somebody willing to do this? But honestly, it's like everything. If there's a need there and way more people are asking for it, it will not cost that much money anymore. Sure. And so that's number one. To the HVAC, yeah, that's an interesting question. Now everybody knows it from at home. You know, we're buying a home and there's an HVAC system in it. The first thing my wife said is, "Do I have to take out all the ductwork?" And sure, deep in my heart, I knew, yeah, we should. You know, we didn't. And the point is, I think we have to be more sensible in that regards. Sure, there are filters out there. Where you can do way more than we currently do, but we have to be realistic. We cannot plug these filters in because they're basically reducing the size of the ductwork, and so everything doesn't work anymore with the speed of the air. So it would need more volume where we bring the air in, but it's doable. And I think going forward on the buildings we build, I hope that this will be more and more an ask and normal. And then it will be also, we will be able to pay for it because it will be not that expensive anymore. Yeah,
I would add to that. You know, the part of the Siemens Smart Infrastructure team that I work with, we are in the business of building automation as it relates to HVAC controls. So we spent a lot of time talking about these issues, and just fundamentally from a energy efficiency standpoint, it's more energy efficient to recondition the air that you've already conditioned that's in the building. But at its most basic, we have the ability in most cases to bring in much more outside air just through the system that was already there. So that's a first step. I think this is also a time where we could drive forward innovation, and we see that in all these other ways that we've talked about. But if you look at, we have technology right now, so if you were in a large commercial building with a big atrium, there's a smoke evacuation system that has to be put in place per code. So if there was a smoke event in the lobby area, that they could get that smoke out of the space. So as part of that, there's mechanized windows that open to allow that space to evacuate, and there's other mechanisms that can do it as well. But the one that caught my attention was the windows that could be opened. And so what that means to me, the concern from an energy standpoint is, well, if all the windows can be opened and closed, someone may have all their windows open and the heat's on 90 and we're not efficiently managing our building. Well, this is that innovative moment where we could change how we're approaching that. And the technology already exists. It's not a technology question. It's more of a, how are we going to use that in a way? And again, it comes back to empowering the people in the building so that they feel comfortable. They have some control over, am I getting outside air through the HVAC system? Am I getting outside air from the open window? Or am I depending on my building manager to do that? And if I am, what data are they providing me about what the conditions are? Because frankly, a lot of buildings are managing this well now, but we're totally blind to it as an occupant in the building. So starting with, here's what the quality of air looks like. Here's the makeup of outside air. Here's the level of particulate. Here's the level of humidity. Having that information fundamentally may be a good place to start. I'm a fan of outside air, so I would love for, I'm sitting in my office now and you probably can see the windows behind me. They don't open. So I would totally advocate for that. But I think this is that moment where the need, because technology it's not an issue, it exists. It's really more, are we willing, to Lars's point, to find a way to make the technology work for us, both from a cost perspective and from a viable outcome perspective.
Thank you both. The next question from our community today is related to larger scale infrastructure and micro interventions in infrastructure, meaning how will we need to really integrate infrastructure design to better include technology as part of the design specifications, and then make technology really a part of, if you will, smart infrastructure. And how do we in the private sector and as technologists really help to drive that change in a smart way, meaning not make it so expensive, not make it so complicated, not make it so mysterious, but almost, if you will, make it seamless relative to the transition. So another one of those big questions, but you guys are doing very well, so I'll offer it to you both. And then I'm getting some advice. If we can try to, including me, be a little bit briefer in the way I ask the question and the way that we're answering them, that would be great. So maybe we can get more questions in before we end. Jaime, you want to start and then we'll go to Lars?
Sure. So on this one, I think, I hate the phrase future-proof because you can't. But I think the smartest thing we can do from a technology standpoint is to be prepared to prepare the backbone. So I don't know what the technology, what our innovations will come in the next months, weeks, years. But what I do anticipate is that they'll be riding on Wi-Fi and wired and Wi-Fi communication. And so then figuring out, how we can be robust enough to take all that information, because what we do with it is, that's the part I can't even conceive of moving forward, but making sure that we are planning for infrastructure, or to allow for us to evolve our infrastructure within the built environment for what's to come, because I think the opportunities are, limitless.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Lars?
Yeah, I would add one point to that. I would say up to now, we saw, okay, there's an infrastructure project, and then somebody talks about controls and, this technology we need to, what we just described. I think going forward, we have to also think about, and I think there's so many ideas out, and some people start to do it. Can we create also with the technology a new revenue stream? And in the moment we come up with these ideas that we really can create a new revenue stream, it is basically a cost reduction and gives more, opens, I would say, a bigger box and more opportunities. And I think, in my opinion, when you said at the beginning, we're talking about smart cities now for some time, and it not kicked, for my opinion, it didn't kick on really. It didn't, we were not really embracing it as we probably should have. And I think one of the things is always, you invest something while you're getting out. And I think in the moment we are getting more creative in the revenue side, I think then there's a way more as a willingness to invest in that and drive it really.
Well, one of the other things, and Jaime, you referred to this, was the relationship to the opportunities as we think about smart cities and workforce. And we think about smart cities in terms of wellness now and climate, as well as resiliency. This notion of workforce being better prepared to help us deliver smart cities is also an equity opportunity, because maybe we can help the future workforce connect to this trend. Have you thought about that, and Lars, in ways in which we might be able to make that bridge and connection?
Definitely. I think, where there's the workforce is shrinking, and particularly in the construction and trades world, which Lars lives in and I work in some ways, we see fewer and fewer people entering into that part of our business. And part of it has to do with technology and trade, where those things come together. And so that's where the space that I've been really focused on in terms of trying to find opportunities to expand workforce. And what we're finding is that there's so many different avenues that were slowly being adopted, and now, similar to the way that the pandemic pushed digitalization, us looking at different ways to increase our workforce, and through that, just as a really great side benefit, is that we're seeing an improvement in diversity and equality through the workforce who's coming, that we're creating here. One of the other areas that we've had success, and I think has the opportunity to be greater, and it's something that comes really from, at Siemens, it comes from our German roots, is the focus on apprenticeship. I think there's an opportunity, it looks different now, particularly right now in our world, and how we handle apprenticeship, but I think that's another way that will help to for our workforce to evolve to meet these needs, and for our and to address the issues that we have beyond, in terms of equality.
It's you're thinking about it, and you're implementing some actions already. So that's greatly appreciated from my perspective. Of course, I'm so excited about your answer. Good work, Jaime.
I'll take all the credit. Thanks.
Lars, how are you doing on this particular question? It's a very challenging issue, but one that maybe presents some opportunity for us in terms of getting more people and new people to join us in this effort.
Yeah, Jaime answered very well, but we at Turner, we're focused on our people and all the people we're working with, and we take very deliberate steps, to address what you just said. It's equality and equity, and it's in every regards. It's in regards of education, training, zero tolerance, anti-bias, and basically promotion practice. And with, I think with that, we see it more and more. We basically also inspire more people, you know, to go in that business, because we create a different environment. And we, trust me, we take it very, very serious. And I think we are here on the forefront, really, of our industry.
Well, I've been fortunate to work in parallel and see the amazing innovations and opportunities that Turner provides in the relationship that you have to the broader community. And it kind of speaks for itself, Lars, in many ways.
Oh,
so you guys should be pretty proud of yourselves. But it's one of those things that my board and my staff, as we think about this transformation of cities, that proactive thinking about the relationship to smart cities and technology, and our relationship to inviting all people to be part of it, and doing our best to connect the dots on social and environmental and economic justice while we transition are critically important. So I'm glad we got some reference to that in the chat room, and I'm glad I got a chance to ask that question. We have to start closing this conversation. Michael, you should know you could do another hour on this, you know, sometime in the future.
I know. I mean, I don't know if the panelists are still up to it, if we maybe have a chance for one last short question. I know we're going a little bit over, but it's so interesting to listen there, and the hour passed by in no time. Huh?
Yes, it did. I can ask our colleagues in the chat room and that are watching this, and our panelists, do you have a few more minutes to share with us, Jaime and Lars?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful, good. Well, Michael just gave us permission to go a little bit longer, so thank you, Michael. So I got a number of questions regarding transport, and so from questions like, how can we help transport reposition itself, particularly as it relates to air filtration systems and bringing quality air into our subways and our buses? And isn't that a good idea now? And what can we do in the near term? But isn't it a good idea as we transition? Another critical point that was raised relative to smart cities is a big important question, of course, and it also is related to cleaner air, is the electrification of our transportation system. So both in terms of air quality and filtration, and how it may relate to electrification. Again, maybe Jaime, you want to start, and then we'll turn it over to Lars again?
Sure. I think, you know, this is, although not an area of expertise for me, it is an area of interest. And I think what I've read and what I've learned and what I've heard from my colleagues who are in the field is that this is, again, that opportunity for innovation. The technology exists. I happen to live in northeastern Connecticut, and this morning before I came to work, I heard on the news that Metro North is implementing some new processes around clean air and clean surfaces on their trains. And so it was, the technology is out there. It's more a matter of, do we want to make this a priority to adopt it, and how, as a rider, do I want to feel empowered to know, is it in use? What's the density? Because no matter how well of a job we do for quality of air in public transportation, inside of the public transportation, it's still a personal choice of what level am I comfortable with. What I want to be empowered with, the amount of risk that I'm willing to take. So I think, you know, using that information and empowering people, and then desire to go ahead and adopt technology that's already readily available, those are going to be drivers in that area. In terms of electrification, that's a much bigger conversation, but I will say that I think the technology there's a couple of things. One of them, Lars touched on it earlier, is the being able to make it viable financially. And I think there's new ways of approaching transportation that look at it more like some of the other financial models that we already have around purchasing power, because one of the challenges of moving to electrification for our fleets, the MBTAs, different modes of transportation, has been the cost of the electricity to make them run, and that fluctuates really significantly. So now having the ability to buy the electricity, being able to plan on what that's going to cost and not have the volatility that's normally part of buying electricity makes that much more attainable for a municipality. Being able to take that risk and give it to a third party is a way that there can be a public-private partnership there, so that the public isn't riding along on the volatility of the electrical markets. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and while we're in the innovation space, this would be a good time for us to look at that more closely.
Agreed on all those points. Lars, anything you want to do, and then we're going to turn it back to Michael.
I know even less than Jaime about that thing, but she answered it perfectly. But perhaps you said at the beginning, transportation repositioning. Perhaps we have to think a bit wider. Means, okay, we have existing system, but simple discussions. Why we're not expanding or getting new ways for transportation. And we can go back to simple systems like Europeans are using in a lot of different cities. They take bicycles, I could change the New York grid in basically in 3 months, and build the 5 bridges they're proposing. How I get then from Brooklyn and Queens in 5 minutes to Manhattan. Like thought processes people had 150 years ago when they were buying or building the Brooklyn Bridge. I think we have to step back a bit and rethink some of the things we're doing, and bring other options out there for transportation.
Well, a nice way to finish, kind of again, reminding us that the past may actually speak to the future. And I really appreciate that, Lars, and your context and perspective on that is, throughout my conversations with you, has been incredibly helpful and nice. It's a nice reminder that there might even be some thoughtful romantic trends associated with the future of bicycling and walking in open space.
We can take an e-bike,
Okay, you've added the technology. I'm okay with that. Michael, again, thank you and the German American Business Council for hosting this and for bringing us together. And again, thank you so much to all of our colleagues that joined us today on this conversation. And of course, Jaime and Lars, wonderful job. I'll turn it back to you, Michael, to close and suggest some of the other great works that the Business Council's preparing in the future.
Thank you, Rick. And wow, that was a quick 1 hour passing by there. We will take your questions, which you put into the chat, and try to include some of these, like mobility came up several times, into future panels and continue the discussion over there. But today I really would like to say thank you very much to our panelists, to Jaime Paris-Boisvert from Siemens Smart Infrastructure and Lars Leitner from Turner Construction, as well to our great moderator, Rick Dimino from A Better City. And also again, a big thank you to Siemens Smart Infrastructure for being the presenting sponsor for this panel series. And with that, I would like to point your attention already to the next event, which is already planned. It will take place on November 12th from 12 to 1 p.m. Topic there is creating smart and resilient cities, a comparison. And we will have Matt Noble from Danish Architects and Professor Gisa Siemer from the Hafen City University. And the whole thing will be moderated by Mike Lake, who is the CEO from the leading city. So I think also a very interesting discussion which comes up there. Me and the whole board of the GABC say thank you for your participation today, and we are looking forward to welcoming all of you back to this next event, where actually, if you have a second now, you can sign up right now under www.gabc-boston.org, and then you're all set. And then I'm looking forward to seeing all of you on the 12th of November again. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Michael.